USAspending.gov says that to date, the federal government has spent more than $3.5 trillion in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. In all large government expenditure programs, some waste, fraud, and abuse is inevitable. Lessons learned from that pandemic spending can be used to deter further waste, fraud, and abuse in future programs like the infrastructure law, so that proper oversight is in place. Glenn Fine is a former Inspector General for the Department of Justice and is currently at the Brookings Institution. Glenn, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So there was a committee made up of several inspectors general called the Pandemic Response Accountability Committee, the PRAC. Has that been effective in overseeing pandemic spending?
I think it has been useful to have the PRAC there to track oversight spending and to coordinate oversight by individual IGs of the pandemic relief spending. It has worked well. It has taken its responsibility seriously, but there has been significant fraud and waste in this COVID relief spending, partly because the amount of money that went out the door was significant, and it went out very quickly in response to the COVID pandemic disaster. So because there weren't sufficient internal controls over that money, there has been significant fraud, and it will be harder to recoup that money once it's out the door.
You know, part of the pandemic relief was the Paycheck Protection Program, and the Inspector General for the Small Business Administration said that the magnitude of fraud was, quote, unheard of and unprecedented. Why is that?
I think partly because there weren't effective internal controls before the money went out the door. So normally things that are done, checking against fraud lists to prevent the money from going out the door to people who don't deserve it, didn't occur. There was lightning speed to get that money out, but there was not the effective oversight of that money, so there was significant fraud. Normally fraud in government programs is on the order of 5% or 7%. Estimates of the fraud in this program are significantly higher because of that speed that it went out the door without effective checks on it.
So Glenn, is that money that was gotten through fraud, is that gone, or can we get some of that back for the American taxpayer?
Well, the Inspector General does have many investigative oversight efforts to get it back. There are cases. There will be recouping of that money, but it's much harder to get that money once it's out the door and disappeared. Often the people with fraudulent businesses, fake identities, and it is very difficult to get all of it back, but some of it will be recouped. And that's what the Inspectors General are doing, and that's what the PRAC is helping the Inspectors General to do, to recoup that money.
So let's talk about some of that coordinated oversight that you're talking about, because this is trillions of dollars. So how do you go about coordinating oversight of that much money?
Well, the PRAC is trying to do that through the work of the Inspectors General. There are 21 Inspector General on that committee. The PRAC has tools to help those Inspectors General, including data analytics tools to look at fraudulent indicators, such as fictitious names, money going to the same address, small businesses that are alleged to have many employees when they don't have any employees at all. Some small businesses claim to have 1 million employees, so weren't even eligible in the first place. So the PRAC is helpful with its data analytic tools, and it has also created a public-facing website to show where that money is going. And in addition, it has a hotline for people to call in tips and complaints, and it then provides that information to the individual Inspectors General, as well as with investigative support to those Inspectors General.
So turning to the infrastructure spending now, the law doesn't include independent oversight of that funding. Do you know why that wasn't included in the law?
I think it was a mistake not to create a similar coordinating entity like the PRAC to oversee infrastructure spending. Infrastructure spending is a fertile target for fraudsters. It's difficult often to verify the money that goes out the door. Costs are difficult to verify. There can be bid rigging and collusion, so that it is a fertile target for fraudsters, and there does need to be coordinated oversight of that, like the PRAC helps to do with the COVID funds. There was some money in the infrastructure bill that was given to individual Inspectors General, but there wasn't that coordinating body like the PRAC, or like with the Recovery Act in 2008, there was a recovery board. I think that was an oversight.
So what's your biggest recommendation then for reducing waste, fraud, and abuse in the infrastructure law and in future large expenditure programs?
There are a few. One is to make the PRAC permanent so that its tools don't lapse when the COVID relief spending is over, and it can hit the ground running when there are large infrastructure bills or other bills with large expenditure programs. Two, ensure that IGs are funded adequately. IGs return money to the government, but they have increasing demands on them with the large expenditures, and they haven't been given adequate resources. So we should make the increase in IG funding commensurate with their increased responsibilities. And then we should also make sure that there is an oversight body to coordinate oversight of the large expenditure bills. So for example, PRAC could be made responsible for coordinating oversight over infrastructure spending or other large expenditure programs. Don't let these important tools lapse so that they can hit the ground running when there are new expenditures that need oversight.
All right. Well, Glenn, thanks very much for joining us. Nice to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.